What was it like for you growing up in, or in part, in a house with so many of your relatives there? I mean, I think a lot of young people today have no sense of what it's like to live in an extended family situation like that.
You're right.
And was it a good experience?
It was beautiful. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. My great-grandmother did most of the cooking. My grandmother was more or less the nurse for everybody, and I loved my grandmother. That was my mother's mother. So I think that's how I happened to pick it up, because I loved her and I watched her and what she did. But it was a lovely, big family. Not only did he have all of us in that house, he built a smaller house not too far down the road for one of his daughter's sons who had married and had 10 children. So he built a house for them. And all of this family worked on his farm. Well, he had a big farm. He had cattle, he had chickens, he had gardens, and everything was just beautiful.
How did he get to be that successful in that, you know, in those times for a man of color, you know?
Well, that's what I'm saying. This white fella came back and helped him get what he had.
But he kept it.
Yeah, and he kept it. Yeah, he was a good manager. He had only 4th grade education, but he had been in this home where he had learned to manage, and he was a very good manager. So he kept it, and he managed it so that he continued to improve it. And he was there. Really, he lived until he was 88 years old, and he was still in his 2-story White House.
Now, how did your mother and father meet? Do you know?
How did they meet?
Yeah.
At some kind of picnic, they said. He was a little older than she was, but had a good job. Back during those days, black, especially men, didn't get good jobs. But luckily, he had what was considered then a pretty good job. He was an elevator operator. Back when elevators were not electrically, he was an elevator operator in a cotton exchange building, and was making pretty good money, but was just too jealous for my mother to deal with, really. Mm-hmm. He knew how to manage his money. He saved his money. Even though they separated, he married again. She married again, but she married a policeman. She went to Kansas. She took us and went to Kansas. And she married a policeman who lived only 4 months after she married him. He was killed by someone on the streets. And but my daddy married again and lived for years with the second wife. But she insisted that he take her out of the country, so he did. They lived in Dallas, which meant Dallas was not but about 25 miles from where we were in the country. And
so you didn't get to see him very much.
Yep, that's another good story. Every year my mother would put us in the car and drive from Wichita, Kansas to Dallas, Texas, and we would stay in the house with he and that second wife and visit them every year. Until I was at Tuskegee the last year we made a visit. I was like 20-something years old, last visit we made.
I noticed that you didn't use her name. You said that second wife.
Yeah.
Sounds like she was not one of your favorite people.
Well, you know, she was different from the women in my family, but she had no children, and but he did. They saved money, and he had, when he passed, he had 7 rent houses. So consequently, he was a good manager.